Joining us today, courtesy of Vivid Seats, head coach of your LA Kings, Jim Hiller. Jim, thanks for joining us today.
Yeah, no problem. Nice to be here, guys.
And of course, featuring Zach Dooley. Zach, how are you doing today?
Jesse, I'm excited, ready to go.
All right. Jim, I want to start off real quick because obviously head coaches in the NHL today are not able to get into all the questions that we might want to ask. So I've tried to come up with a question that I can ask that'll sort of get around the specifics.
Okay.
If I
Well,
can.
This will be interesting. I felt like I've been asked every question that somebody could ask me here over the last couple of weeks, but I know I haven't, but it feels like it.
But just to get a general sense of your approach to head coaching, where, if you can, what's the balance between trying to determine a strategy and trying to determine the sort of psychological impact of it? So, for example, today in your morning availability, you talked about the importance of forwards tracking back.
Yeah.
So that's something that you can tell the forwards you want them to do.
Yeah.
But another part of coaching is trying to motivate or compel them to actually do it. So where do you balance strategy versus the emotional components?
Well, I think the emotional component and the just the heads in general are the most important part of any player, and maybe any of us. I mean, we can all know the right thing to do. We can see it. We can watch it. We can describe it ourselves. But creating an emotional link to do it and a willingness to do it, that's the harder part for all of us. So I would, I don't know, I couldn't give you a ratio, but I would say, without a doubt, it's a strong majority that the head component is the most important part of any strategy.
So in that case, is it beneficial to have a coaching staff that has, for example, you've got Trent Yanni who played defense, you played forward. Is it important then to have that diversity of experience in the coaching staff to be able to provide the strategy, the details, this is what everybody needs to be doing, and then you can worry about, are they doing it? How do you get them to do it?
Yeah. I mean, those discussions we have every day. So there's strategy discussions. That's part of our morning. Was this morning. How did we execute in certain areas, and then of course there's how were certain players? Where are they at? Were they engaged last night? Did we get everything we could out of them, irrespective of whatever the strategy was? Where are they at? So it's a two-part discussion, and we're diverse. We take everybody's opinion. Everybody has a chance to let us know what they thought, and it's surprisingly enough, you think you've seen it, you've been around it, and somebody else comes up with a new idea or a suggestion or a thought that maybe takes you in a different direction, and it's just valuable information. It spurs on another discussion oftentimes. So the diversity of the whole staff is really important, and I think what's important is also having younger people closer to the age of the players, that generation involved in those discussions. That really helps.
I'm going to guess that you've had that kind of planning and those kinds of meetings every stop that you've been as a head coach, but how has it changed for you, maybe going from one of the guys collaborating or maybe changing the topic to the guy leading those discussions?
Maybe, what's maybe changed the most is the structure of it. So, because I've been, been on many staffs and been in those meetings, and every head coach has a little bit different structure to get to those discussions. And so mine might be, to be honest, a little bit more chaotic and not as organized as maybe and as some of the other coaching staffs I've been with. My style is a little bit more free-for-all, interrupt me. Somebody, if you're not asked a question, doesn't matter. If you have a thought and pops into your head, even if somebody else is talking, I don't even mind if you blurt it out and just say what you're thinking. So I think I'm probably a little bit less formal that way, and I don't know, that's probably not better. The other guys that I've been with have been pretty organized, but that's just what works for me. Just talking, thoughts, ideas, throw it out there, and then kind of sift through it and try to come up with a decision.
As a former player, do you ever think back on coaches that you had and think, I don't want to do that or coach that way?
Yeah, I thought about it, at the time. I probably always had an eye on coaching and was kind of interested in, human behavior, coaches' behavior, players' behavior, why it was hard for me sometimes. I wasn't one of the guys that the coaches loved that would just every night after night, shift after shift. I had to have some reasons why. That was my issue, not theirs. And, so I thought hard about how they approached different players in the team. And So I took that with me, till to today as being the coach, being on the other side of that.
A lot of guys have praised your communication methods going from coach to player. How have you seen that process change over the years? Is it, do you try to coach and communicate in a way that may have benefited you as a player? Because it seems like today's player is just very different maybe than it was 10, 20, 30 years ago.
Yeah, on that, I guess my style or my personality has always been, probably to talk too much. So it's been easy for me. Since I started coaching until today, I think I've just always had the same approach. I haven't changed with the times, if you want to call that, over the years of coaching, or with the level of player. I think what I learned in coming to the NHL was, I first came out of junior to the NHL, and I was kind of like, okay, now I'm coaching in the NHL. This is different, and yes, it is. They're pros. There's a little bit different vibe, but in the end, the interactions and the communication style, I realized should just be the same. In the end, they're hockey players. You have to give them information. You also have to talk to them about what else is going on in their life, like anybody else would, pop culture or anything else like that. That's interesting. So I've just kind of maintained that through my junior and now NHL coaching career.
I want to apply everything we've talked about so far to the team right now. When you were named the head coach of the LA Kings, you talked about the priority being getting the headspace right. And apologies if I'm not phrasing that exactly the right way. So how do you know when you've done it? I mean, what's step one to get a team's headspace?
No, that's a good question. I said it the other night. As coaches, and players too, we're all chasing perfection. You never find perfection. So there's never an end line. There's never a finish line. I guess if you lift the Stanley Cup at the end of the year, that's the finish line for one team and one team only. So we think we're getting closer to getting in the right headspace, but we reviewed the game this morning, and there was lots of things we liked and lots of things that we thought we should have done better. So we have to improve the things that we need to do better. So you never quite get to where you want to go, but we are feeling like, the game in Vancouver, let's take that game home. The game last night was a similar game to the Vancouver. We felt like, okay, that was a step in the right direction, without a doubt. So, today we feel a little bit better about things, but let's see tomorrow.
Is it exclusively judged by on-ice results? You don't know this about me, but we've talked about Ted Lasso a lot on the show. I don't know if you watched it.
I've watched it.
Okay,
I know
so
Ted.
the scene after they do the trash can sacrifice thing, and then the next morning Ted Lasso's walking through the locker room, and guys are playing around with each other and interacting. Well, I mean, are there moments like that where you can see, okay, maybe the result wasn't there on the ice, but we know that the locker room is at least where we want it to be?
Yeah, right. And you have to start in the locker room. That goes back to our original question about, what part is it versus the head versus the strategy. The most important, let's back it up before either of those two things and go into the locker room. That's the most important. That's Trump's strategy and head, because that's the heart and the spirit of the team. So that has to be one in place, and then that has to grow. And that's, I think, what you're talking about now is when you walk past and you see that, do you feel the spirit of the team growing? And it's easy to grow when you're winning, when you get the results, even though the game is random, and sometimes you can do your best and outchance, but not get the result. But is the spirit of the team growing, and should it be growing, because based on the effort and the execution? And those are things I think coaches all keep a pretty close eye on. And we like the direction that it's headed. It's still work in progress, it always is, but we like the direction of that as well.
You guys obviously have a big impact as coaches, but at some point it kind of has to come from within the room as well. Like, how important have Kopitar and Doughty and those types of players, how respected and revered they are, been in helping to kind of change that headspace on their own?
Yeah, well, those guys, I mean, invaluable. And invaluable, they've had the experiences through the years, both of them, and they've got to the finish line. So they know what it takes and how hard it is. So you don't have to try to coax them on and say, hey, what's really hard? They know. They've been through it. They've fought the battles. So anytime that those types of players address the team or within, whether it's loud or quiet or in their own way, people listen. You just have to. So we have that going for us. Those guys have done a great job in trying to get the team refocused and get the mindset back right. And I would add Trevor Lewis into that mix. I could go on and on. Phil Deneau wears an A, and it goes down throughout the lineup. But I would add Louis, because he's been in those battles with those guys too, together. So he's really got a strong voice.
I want to focus on one result specifically. I wasn't planning on doing it, but you brought up how random the game can be. We're recording this the day after the the New Jersey Devils game. They score 15 seconds into the game off of a total fluke play. The next 59 minutes, 45 seconds, you get what's been called, one of the fullest 60-minute efforts under your tenure. If that goal had come 2 minutes into the game and not 15 seconds into the game, is it harder to bounce back from a goal like that?
I don't know. That's the beauty of the game. You know what I mean? And we might say, we might be sitting here talking and saying, you know what, you guys lost by one, man. That fluky goal, that really, that was probably the difference maker. Set you guys back. You just don't know game to game. And you just know if your team's ready to play, the guys give themselves the best chance because their frame of mind. If they're willing to go out there and work consistently and hard for one another, then no matter what happens, whether it's 2 minutes in or 15 seconds in or at 58-minute mark, you're going to give yourself the best chance to win. And so those things, although they can affect you, what's way more important is the frame of mind of the team going into the game.
When something like that happens, and they happen all year long, does it impact you differently as a head coach than it would have as an assistant coach?
That is actually a good question. I'm trying to work that one out myself. I'm wondering why I'm so angry all the time now. And my wife is wondering that too. So it has affected me. I would say it has, having said that, it has affected me a little bit more. There's no question. I think, sometimes in the assistant coach role, your job is to get people refocused. You can bring some energy. You can, try to pat guys on the back. As the head coach, you're focusing on more things. You have more things, so you don't always have the time or the wherewithal to focus on that type of thing. And so, in those moments where before I might have just been like, no big deal, boys, let's go. It's affected me a little bit different.
Maybe, we talk about players having to go through the ups and downs and the ebbs and flows. Is it the same maybe as a coach, right? You can't get too high or too low in those moments, and it seems to be even more high, more low as a head coach.
Yeah, that's right. But having said that, there's no question. For me, you can't get too high, too low, and affect the team negatively. But I also believe when the guys do something well or when it's going well, you can get high and encourage them and be part of it. One of the great parts of being a coach is you get to be on the bench, even though you're not out in ice on the fight. You feel like you're as close to the fight as you can be. And so with that comes emotion, just like the players. And so you got to maintain your senses. But to me, from time to time, the coach got emotional. When I was playing, I felt like, you know what? He can't help himself. He's in this thing with us. So, I cut myself some slack sometimes when it comes to that.
I imagine it's helpful to have guys like Kopitar, Doughty, Lewis, Deneau, when it comes to regulating those emotions, the swings, the highs versus the lows. But is there any benefit to having younger players who maybe haven't sorted that out yet? They wear their heart on their sleeve maybe a little bit more. Can you use that to push the team in whichever direction you need it to go?
I haven't thought about it specifically like that, but what I do know is you have a diverse set of characters that are on the team at different energy levels, different emotional levels, and that's the beauty of it. It all comes together as one. So sometimes, we don't like when a player might overreact emotionally, but you know what? Sometimes you're wishing, hey, I wish we had somebody who reacted emotionally. So there's really no right or wrong. I think when you like the stability, but you also like the energy. It's just got to come together. If it's authentic and people are real in there and they all want to win together, then you just take what comes. That's the issue is if you have people that aren't all bought in and not trying to win, and then you've got emotions, that's when you maybe get bothered. But when everybody's all in, stuff happens. It's an emotional game.
Talking about that diverse cast of characters, I want to use that to sort of pivot into one of the harder realities of professional sports, which is that everybody's always competing for a spot. So you have veterans, you have younger players, you have coaches that have aspirations. How have you personally approached the concept of sometimes somebody's success comes at somebody else's reduction of success?
Yeah, I mean, that's a hard one. And it is the business we're in. We all know that. Whether you were a player, you got into coaching, you start coaching typically in junior, it's a very competitive, ultra competitive, aggressive type of business. And to survive, you get whacked sometimes, and sometimes people you like get whacked, and it just is what it is. It's the fight that we're all in, and sometimes it's not always fair. That's for sure. So, but you got your choice. You either get out and get into something a little more stable, a little more rational, or you just sign back up again and keep swinging. And that's why you just have so much respect for the people who've been in the game for so long, and have been through those fights, and they're still swinging.
When you're in a game and you think about making some kind of an adjustment to the personnel, it always feels like to me like this isn't something that you're just doing. You've thought about it. Do you have, not looking for specifics, but have you thought of like, oh, I like how this guy might fit with these two guys, and at some point in the game or at some point down the road, hey, I'd like to see how this looks on the ice. Like, have you kind of pre-calculated some of those moves in advance, even if we haven't seen them publicly?
Right. Yeah. Yes, definitely. I mean, we talk about that as a coaching staff too, but it's something that, you're out for dinner and you're, with the coaches, not with your wife, and you're thinking about hockey and you're talking about hockey. It's the dead times, it's the non-pressure times, but you're still thinking like, how can we get better? What would this look like? Does this player complement this player enough? Can we get more? What if we put the three together? Can we get more out of all three? Is the sum of the parts greater than the whole if we can do it this way? Or by doing that, do we take away here? So this is and maybe we overthink it in those moments. But yes, to answer your question directly, we do. And there's some times where in a game, certain players have more energy. They're feeling better. So maybe that's when you make that switch. And maybe it calls for it in a certain moment of the game. Somebody else doesn't have as much energy and much legs. Maybe you need somebody else with that player. So long answer short, or short answer long. Definitely, and I think it's an important part of the coaching process.
Don't discredit your wife. She might have some ideas.
Oh no, she has some ideas, but she just doesn't want to hear about mine all the time over dinner. You know what I mean? She'd rather just talk about something else once in a while.
We know from following this team and talking to the players and members of the organization that some players prefer to play one side of the ice. We've heard that Arthur Kaliyev likes to play the right. Mm-hmm. We heard that Fiala and Moore wanted to experiment with switching sides. When you are constructing these ideas in your head, line combinations, we talked this morning in the morning availability about the necessity sometimes to make line changes. How much input do players have on what you may do with the lineup in a game?
Not much. What I would say is, if you look at our lineup currently, with RV out, we have two right shot forwards in Louis and Laugh. So somebody's going to play on their offside. And if you look at Phil's line, there's three lefties together. Somebody's going to play on the right wing, who's a left shot. Somebody's going to play on the other side. For a while, Morsey was on the right, Kevin was on the left. They've switched. They switched on their own. Hey, we want to do this? Go ahead. That's, for me, the side you play on that's a discussion between the players, who feels most confident, who likes it. Even sometimes, if you're struggling, they flip sides. Or sometimes could be certain circumstances you're getting pinched down on by D, and there's no room at all. Sometimes they switch sides to give themselves a different angle coming off the boards against the pinch. So those decisions will leave up to the players. But as far as the lines, who plays with who, they don't get input on that.
Does it make it easier that you have so many guys who are versatile and can play pretty much all three forward positions? Like, 9 of the 12 regular forwards were natural centers. Yeah. So you can they can do that in game because they know all the positions.
Yeah, that really is a benefit. There's no question. And then people in hockey will all tell you, you'd rather have centermen. It's so much easier for centermen to come to the wing. When you have to put a winger in center, it's just a whole different beast. That's a tough transition. So the wingers are fine. They want to play center, I get, or the centers want to play center, but they'll go over to the wing. I got Turk over on the wing right now with Kopi. He's a natural center. He's made the adjustment. It looks like he's played wing his whole life. So that's the strength of the way the roster is currently set up.
You have two right shot forwards currently in the lineup, but you've got one on LTIR in Victor Arvidsson. He was placed on a line, 2 years ago now with Moore and Deneau. Mm-hmm. Nobody, certainly none of us in this room, saw that being as successful a combination as there was. How much benefit came from having just even one extra guy with a right shot in that lineup? I know you've talked about the impact on the power play.
Yeah, you've heard me talk about it on the power play for sure. No, I think there's real benefits in the offensive zone also. If you think about how the power plays set up, you have the right shot. He has a chance to look across the ice for lefties. When it's on the other side, the lefty has a chance to look across the ice for the righties. So it only holds that if you're in the O-zone at 5-on-5, it's nice to have at least one of those shots be an offhand, because now you can make those passes through the seams and you can shoot one-timers rather than having to catch and shoot. So, yeah, there's something to it for sure. But, when we get another righty in, it'll help balance that out a little bit. But in the meantime, this is what we have. We go with what we have.
As a head coach, you have to do more things like this, right? You have conversations with us every day. You're kind of speaking to the media. How much did you know about the other stuff that comes along with being a head coach besides, the actual hockey side of it?
Well, I got a pretty good taste of it because I went with the coaching staff from Detroit to Toronto. So I was in Toronto for 4 years. So I got to see it there. I don't know if there's any more demanding market than Toronto. Got to see just generally the media on the coaches, on the players. So from there, it's not as much, but you got to see firsthand that it's a big part of the job, and the messaging for the players to one another, from the coaches to the players, from the organization through to everybody and fans. Media is a very important part of getting the right messages across.
The habits or desires of media seem to always be sometimes aligned with what a coaching staff might want. Sometimes they're very different. They want to know, the starting goalie, or they want to know exact lineup combinations. Maybe you guys don't want to, send that always out. Like, has there been a ton of maybe disconnect between what you expected and what people want to hear, or have you kind of generally found it's been pretty seamless?
No, I think it's been really good myself. It's on me if there's a question that I don't want to give an answer to specifically, just to not answer the question specifically. So I can appreciate everybody asking all the questions. That's the job, for sure. And whether you get the answer you want or not, is not always up to you. But to ask the question and expect an answer, I think if there's something that I don't want to talk about, I won't talk about it. But I try then on the other question to try to give you a little bit more color, or and share at least my thoughts, and give you a half decent answer if I can.
Not that you on the coaching staff and people like Zach and I on the content side have any similarities in our jobs, but from time to time I will find myself having to answer questions from fans about information not given that fans want. And I say, most of the time, the discretion is on my part. I'm not revealing certain things because I don't think it's appropriate or right. Or very rarely is it coming from somewhere up the organization saying, don't talk about this or do talk about that. You obviously know what to talk about and what not to talk about, but when you made the switch from assistant coach to head coach, was there a sort of one sheet of like, don't tell the media who's the next head coach or the next goalie, or do you know enough not to?
Yeah. But let me get back to the first question. Mm-hmm. You say we're not the same, but we share a similarity. All of us who are in the game, we love the game. We have different roles in the game, but we're here because we love the game. If you loved horse racing, you'd be hosting a horse racing podcast. You know what I mean? So I think that's the great tie that binds us all. Is we love hockey and we love the Kings. We're with this organization. So I would never separate anybody who loves hockey, and that's a fan too. I mean, we're all in this together. We, for whatever reasons, we love the sport. We're addicted to it, and we're all pulling together. And I think it's a great thing. I think it's a great thing about our sport. It's passionate and emotional. But to answer your question, no, there's no sheet that says don't talk about this and do talk about that. I think some of the things are just logical. You don't want to give away any advantage you can to the other team. Some might argue, well, how big of an advantage is that? I don't know. If you can't measure it and you feel like I don't want to give that information, then you just don't give the information. And if people are giving out too much information, then there'd probably be a problem from the organization perspective, because this is a dogfight, to get 2 points, and we need every single advantage to certainly not give any disadvantages to our team.
I want to go off topic because I was researching about your career and I found a game that you played in college, arguably the most exciting college hockey game I think
I got
that
good memories. Yeah.
I have ever seen the score of. I think it was 8-7,
Right.
national championship, triple overtime. Do you remember that game? And I mean, how special was that moment? That was a national title. I think the only one your program won.
Right. Oh no, I remember it like it was yesterday. Those are my brothers for life, man. Playing when you win a championship like that, you'll never forget the night. You never forget your teammates. And I think I have it right. We were down 3-0 after the first period. We were up 7-4 after 2. We were leading 7-6. I think with a minute left, they scored a tie at 7-7. Then they had a breakaway with like 5 seconds left to win. In regulation, they didn't. And then we just had a wild triple overtime that ended up with us winning. But yeah, what a night! What an exciting game. The people who watched that game have said, that was one of the most exciting hockey games they had ever seen. It was so emotional, so many swings. Either team could have won. We got out on the right side of it.
You talk about the guys you win with being, your brothers. You always hear it in hockey, right? You never forget the guys you win with. There's always a special bond with the guys you win with. Is that kind of why guys like Kopi and Drew and Louie are so revered? Is because they've won together and they've earned kind of that status of being the guys who delivered here in LA.
Well, yeah, that's exactly it. I mean, everybody wants to win. It's so difficult to win, and when you can get it done and you can be part of a team that got it done. It's the feeling. It's hard to describe. You got it done, and so many others were trying. So many other good players, good people, everything, committed, and everybody's going after the same thing. So when you get it done, it holds a special place.
You talked about the importance of confidence when you took over, and when a team has success, obviously confidence grows. But is there a threshold where confidence can turn into arrogance? And arrogance can start to lead to a breakdown in the details that you need to win. And how do you monitor that? How do you try and prevent against that?
Well, to me, I've always looked at that on an individual player level because I believe it starts there. And so the game is honest, and you can't get ahead of the game. You just have to. It's such a cliche, but you have to do your thing night after night, do it honestly, with confidence and pride. But when you start getting too far over your skis that way, then you're quickly going this way. Once one guy goes this way, it can cave in on the team really quickly. So I'm more of the belief that you got to monitor that on an individual player level. If you can keep that in check, then your team will be all right. Your team will be good, and that's the part of the leadership you talk about. Sometimes the coach doesn't see it, but the teammates do. The leaders, the captains. And they can straighten that stuff out early, and it never gets to the point where the team gets into that kind of trouble.
So we're recording was today the 4th, as I asked the room. Where's the team's confident level today?
I think we feel pretty good. I think we feel like we've gotten closer to our identity, which I talked about, which was our goal, out of the gate when we got off our break. I think we've gotten a lot closer to it. I don't think we're there yet, but we're feeling better about that. And once you do that, we know that when we play that style of game, we're going to have success on most nights. So to get feeling closer than that, I feel like now we feel like, okay, we trust each other again. Let's go in tomorrow night. We can beat anybody. Doesn't mean we're going to get the result, but we feel good about our game, and we know that if we play it together, we can beat anybody.
We asked you this before we hit the record button. We got such a great answer. I'm going to ask you now again. What was your first car?
Well, and I told you that's an easy question for me. It was a 1981 Datsun 280ZX, and the important thing about that was it had T-tops. So it wasn't a convertible, but those T-tops came off, and I had a lot of fun in that car. Definitely had a lot of fun.
And follow-up, nothing to do with cars. You've played in many different markets, including in Europe. You've coached in many different markets. You mentioned Toronto, Detroit, New York, now LA. Juniors, you were in British Columbia. You talked about everybody that loves the game. What's one thing that is similar in every one of those markets that is unique and familiar wherever you go?
You know what I would say? I would say it's the fans. And that's the fans. It doesn't matter where you go. The fans are so passionate and so behind the team. Whether, I've been in places, as you mentioned, where there's 1,200 fans, but they were passionate and behind the team. The rink was full. You come here, now you got 18,700. They're passionate. The rink is full. They're cheering you on. That, to me, is the common thread. And it's the thread that makes it hard to walk away for anybody who's played, just to walk away from the game, because the support and trying to satisfy people and having everybody in it all together and celebrating together, whether it's just a simple win or a championship, is a pretty good feeling.
Jim Hiller, thanks for joining us. Really appreciate it.
Okay, thank you.